Our guest on the Country Hour today is the Territory's new Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. He's also the Minister for Mining, Energy and Renewables and Recreational Fishing. Gerard Maley, welcome to the Country Hour.
Good morning everyone. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the chance to come here and talk to you and your listeners.
Now, I assume as Deputy Chief Minister you get to have a fair say in what portfolios you get. Well, would that be right?
Well, you have a glance at it, but it ultimately comes down to the Chief Minister.
Okay.
And the Chief Minister's made a decision, and I think she's done a really good job. We've spread those portfolios right across the board. We've got rid of some of those major, bigger portfolios and brought it back to 18, where we think it's going to be more functionable and more over line of command, where it goes up to one minister to be responsible. So instead of having to go up and go through various ministers to get approvals, we have one line and one minister to be able to make those approvals to get the Territory moving again.
So you weren't the Shadow Minister for Ag, but now you are the Minister. What makes you the best person for the gig?
Well, look, I was born in Darwin. I've been here a long time. I consider myself a bit of a rural boy. I'm certainly not a farmer, but I've certainly been on a tractor. I've been in the yards. I've done the odd bale of hay myself. So I think I've had a bit of an opportunity to expose to it. Like I said, I'm not a farmer by any ways, but I have an idea and I'm really keen to get involved because I think the agriculture industry and fishing and mining and gas and tourism and defence are our key pillars to making the Territory a better place.
For you, I know it's early days, but what's the number one priority for you as Minister for Ag and Fisheries?
Well, look, the first thing that we want to do as a government as a whole is we want to make the Territory a safer place. We think that the Territory has come to a place where it's very difficult to do business, it's unsafe to be around, and people generally feel unsafe in their own homes. What we want to do is make the Territory a safer place, and we're going to propose to do that by giving the police some power to deal with the problem of drunks. We're going to deal with the revolving door of bail, because what we think that's going to be able to affect everyone right across the board and make the Territory a better place to do business. Because at the moment now, if you've got employees or family or friends, more than likely they're either a victim of crime or know someone who's a victim of crime. So we want to make the Territory a safer place, because what that does, there's a flow-on effect that people interstate who normally come up and do 3 or 4 months or might say a year aren't coming because they think the Territory is such a dangerous place. So that leads to workforce shortages and education problems. So we think that if we can get the buttons right and get the crime under control, things will flow from that, which is, for example, is rebuilding our economy and restoring our Territory lifestyle.
What about when it comes to agricultural policies, though? What's a top priority for you?
Well, look, we want to deal with workforces and keep people in jobs up here. So if we can get people coming to the Territory to be able to pick mangoes and drive and work on farms and all sorts of things right across the Territory, I think that will be a big key. And also we need to make sure that businesses have got security. They know if they get approval to do something, they get that approval and then they can move on. And obviously I think there's been a lack of infrastructure right across the Northern Territory, so we want to build on that as well.
Our text number at the Country Hour is 0487 99 1057 if you'd like to ask Gerard Maley a question. He's the Territory's new Minister for Ag and Fisheries, Minister for Mining, Minister for Energy. And, gee, some people are quick here. I like it. First question is, what is Minister Maley's thoughts on buffel grass?
Well, look, buffel grass is a base of weed that is basically in the Territory. We've got to get the balance right on this one. We know that it's been declared an invasive weed, but we also know that it's good for cattle production. So I've only been in the job for a week. We know there's an issue that we need to deal with, so it's on our radar. I'm not going to give you an exact answer what we're going to do today because I think it's very detailed and it's been kicking around for a while. So we want to make sure we get it right.
Do you agree with the declaration?
Well, look, in my personal view, we need to see why they made that. And I don't know if it's actually what it is, but you've got to look at the benefit it brings. We know that the cows get fat on it, and we know that live export and farming is a big industry up here. So we just need to go back and look at it and get the balance right about what are we doing, what is the best interest of the Northern Territory, and how can we rebuild our economy.
Another question here for you says, what are his thoughts on the Arrows project? It says, thoughts on the Arrows project that looks to be an extremely wasteful spend of taxpayer dollars.
Well, look, what's happening at the moment, we're going to the return to service for the Mountain Dam to get that water. We know that Middle Arm is coming online, and we know that the feds have chipped in, I think it's $1.5 billion, and we think that's going to be a key to rebuilding our economy. We need to make sure that there's jobs there, and they need cheap energy and they need water. So we need to look at the return to service. At the moment, it seems to be in train. We know what's happening right now is the return to service of Mountain Dam, and we'll get that happening. And then we need to look at our roads and see what the pros and cons are of that.
Are you personally a fan of the idea of an off-stream dam on the Adelaide River?
Well, look, I'm certainly a fan of an idea where we have water available for industry, and I'm certainly not a fan of damming any natural flowing rivers. So that's where I stand in relation to that.
Okay. A question here from Turk, who says, can you please ask Gerard if the Telstra G4 is ever going to be good in the rural area?
Okay, well, I can talk about this. There's 3 towers going out there.
Right.
There's one in Herbert, one near the Howard Springs shops, and one on Gunpoint Road. The one in Herbert is all up and running, and the antennas are attached. They're just waiting to connect. The one in Howard Springs, the tower was built and they're waiting for the antennas to put on. And the one in Gunpoint is a bit far behind because they had to move the location. So I've been told by Telstra that it should be in the next 2 weeks, but I was told that 2 weeks ago.
Okay, because Turk reckons he's had to walk halfway up his block just to send this message to the Country Hour.
Well, look, I understand, and lots of people in Herbert, and that tower is probably the one most progressed. It's a big steel tower. I've seen there myself, and the wires seem to come out, and they're wrapped around the pole, ready to be connected. So I think that one will be the first one ready to go, and that will make a big difference to people right across Herbert because the telecom reception there is really bad.
These are good questions, folks. These are good questions. 0487 99 1057 is the text here at the Country Hour. Our guest in the studio today is the Territory's new Minister for Ag and Fisheries, Mining, Energy, Renewables and Recreational Fishing, Gerard Maley. Now, in the lead up to the Territory election, there was bipartisan support to phase out gill nets in the commercial wild caught barramundi industry over a 4-year period. We had a chat to the boss of the NT Seafood Council the other day, Daniel Capps. He said effectively that bipartisan support has killed off that industry in a heartbeat.
When you make a decision like that, it doesn't take 4 years for you to wind up the industry. What happens is that your financiers and your banks immediately think there's no future in this industry. Your working capital dries up, and effectively the death knell is sounded, minutes after that that comment is made. The impact has been felt immediately. We have boats tied up at the wharf. We have boats that have been sold. We've crew that have been stood down. In many instances, they've been made redundant. So the impact has been pretty swift.
So that's Daniel Capps just a couple of weeks ago. How comfortable are you that the CLP has played a role in what sounds like the commercial barra industry, wild caught, going under?
Well, look, we stand by that commitment, and we are going to phase out gill netting because, unfortunately, maybe one industry is going to go down a little bit. But if you look at the recreational fishing side of it, which brings a lot of money in the Territory, we're hoping that'll go up. So we need to get the balance right, and we're going to deal with these stakeholders about we're not going to do this just willy-nilly. We're going to make sure that there's compensation and that we phase it out in a manner that is the best interest of everyone. But there are ups and downs. We fully accept that. But at the moment, we're focusing on the rec fishing, which brings a lot of money in the Northern Territory. There's a lot of indirect and direct jobs in relation to rec fishing, and we also acknowledge that the wild caught barra is an industry, and we're going to deal with those stakeholders to come up with the best way out of this, to give them some dignity, to say, hey, look, this is an industry, it's closed down, here's some compensation, here's some talking with the government to come up with the best way so you can move on to a new industry and we can reallocate that fishing, the wild caught barramundi and threadfin salmon, to the recreational fisheries.
So as the Minister for Fisheries, you're not going to fight for this industry?
Oh, look, what I'm going to fight for is what's best for the Northern Territory, and we know that the recreational fishing is a massive industry up here. There's lots of direct, indirect jobs, and we want to get the balance right. We want to make sure that some of the players in the recreational fishing can get increased, and some of the players in the commercial can go out in dignity and make sure that they have a good pathway out of that industry.
A question that I am sure is from that industry says, how soon does the Minister intend to contact the seafood industry to discuss compensation for the phase-out of the use of gill nets?
Well, right now, our focus is on making the Territory a safer place. We've committed to do this over 4 years, so what our effort and our time right now is devoted to making the Territory a safer place. We have spoken to the relevant agencies about bringing in legislation in relation to bail, in relation to giving the police more power. So to be honest with you, our focus right now is on keeping Territorians safe, no matter where you are, right across the Northern Territory.
On the text line, someone here says, I'm not a wreck fisherman, but I do want to be able to go and buy wild-caught barra. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, look, ultimately, there is an opportunity for different types of wild-caught barra. We're talking about phasing out gill netting. I know that there's been studies undertaken over in Queensland about line netting, and there's going to be an adjustment. And there might be a decrease in wild-caught barra to start with, but I don't see it phasing out completely because there are other ways to catch that, and you might get a premium fish. I don't know, but that's what we want to go back into the industry, consult with players on both sides of the fence to make sure we get that decision right and get the balance right to allocate the fishing industry right across the Northern Territory.
On the text, someone says, when is the Minister likely to be in Alice Springs, please?
Well, at the moment, we've got our first sittings of Parliament in the 15th of October, so I'm going to be here till then. But I have been talking to, I'm also for mining and industries and a whole range, so I'm going to do a road trip. I'm going to go and visit as many people in the agricultural industry as I can, in the mining industry as I can, and the renewables, and travel up and down the Territory. I'm certainly planning to be a minister who's not based in Darwin, and I'm going to travel as often as I can, but knowing that there's a lot of work to be done here.
Last week, the Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, told people protesting out the front of the NT Resources Week conference that they were not welcome in the Northern Territory.
And the activists standing out the front, you are wasting your time. Go back to Victoria or wherever else you want to cause trouble, but you are not welcome here in the Territory.
It made plenty of headlines, but are you, as the Minister for Mining, and is your government going to listen to these people who have concerns for the environment and about the potential impacts of oil and gas? Or are you just going to be a minister that ignores all of that?
No, we are going to do a minister to get things right in the Northern Territory. We know that the Environmental Defenders offices we're going to defund in relation to the Santos decision. There were some scathing remarks about that. So we need to make sure that people in the Territory who want to do business have got certainty. And I agree with what the Chief Minister said. Those protesters are wasting your time. We want to make sure the Territory is a safe place. We want to rebuild our economy and we want to restore our lifestyle. And that's what we intend to do.
Someone here on the text, this is 0487 99 1057. Someone says, Matt, ask Mr Maley, how is he going to balance the mining portfolio and his wreck fishing portfolio with regards to the Middle Arm precinct and the degradation of the Elizabeth River, says this person.
Well, look, ultimately the mining industry is important and so is the recreational fishing important, and we will get the balance right. Middle Arm, I've been there by water. I've seen some plans. I've had an initial briefing on that, and we are saying that the environment is important. We're not going to cut corners, but we want to make sure that precinct is ready to go so people to come here and do business to rebuild our economy.
Another question, Singleton Station's continually been held up by litigation. What can be done to better support this horticultural development? Well,
look, ultimately, we need to look at that in detail. But as the Chief Minister said, the protesters aren't welcome here. We want to make sure that if you're in the Territory and you want to do business, if you get an approval, that approval is going to be something you can rely upon and move forward. So we need to look at that. My understanding is only a very small portion of the available for water, and we want to make sure that it's here. The Territory is open to do business because, as we spoke about earlier, some of these investors, they're a bit shy about that. So we want to make sure that they've got certainty that if they want to spend their money in the Territory, we will have their money and we will make the place a safer place. We'll rebuild our economy, we'll have jobs, we'll have houses, and we'll increase our workforce.
And just on water, the previous government did start a process that would see a price put on water for industry, and a volumetric charge has been proposed. Are you ready to take the reins on that and keep progressing that?
Look, I'm ready to take the reins on it, but I'm certainly going to revisit it. I'm going to make sure that that decision is in the best interest of all Territorians. It's in the best interest of farmers, of agriculture and mining to make sure we get that balance right. And I'm not going to give the exact detail today because it's a pretty complicated matter, but what I can assure you listeners is that I understand what you're saying, but we want to make sure the Territory is open to do business and we'll do whatever it takes. But mind you, we're not going to cut any corners in relation to the environment, so we want to really stress that point. But But I just want to assure everyone out there that this government, the Elia Finocchio government, is going to make the place a better place to do business. We're going to rebuild our economy, and we think we've got 17 out of the 25 seats, and that's a mandate to do that.
In your own electorate, in the rural area, how do people out there feel about potentially paying for water?
Well, look, I can say that there's going to be no meters on rural bores, on domestic bores. If you're talking about commercial bores, that's a different kettle of fish. But I can say, as I'm standing here right today, as long as my feet are on the ground, there's going to be no meters on rural domestic bores.
Okay. We really appreciate your time. We've got to go and talk about the ACCC, but we better get you back. There's plenty of questions.
Like I said, I'm here ready to go. I'm going to travel as much as I can. I've been here a long time. In fact, I was born in Darwin here for Cyclone Tracy, so I intend to travel around and meet as many people as I can and make decisions in the best interest of the Northern Territory.
Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.